With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know.
And I think, again, staying connected, staying positive and being able to talk to friends and family is so crucial.
For months, the world watched in silence, sensing that something was terribly wrong behind the palace walls. However, Buckingham Palace has released very sad news. In a rare and somber joint statement, King Charles and Prince William have now confirmed heartbreaking information about Princess Catherine's health. As the whole country waits in shock, the royal family is struggling to face a difficult truth that can no longer be kept secret. So, what exactly caused this heartbreaking announcement? Join us as we uncover the shocking revelation by the royal family. The shocking announcement. Behind the tall gates of Windsor and the long hallways of Kensington, a truth was growing, larger, heavier, and far more powerful than any polished palace statement. Something inside the royal world had shifted. And this time, the change couldn't be undone. The royal family was no longer arranging perfect photo moments or shaping a flawless public image. They were hiding something, guarding something, protecting a reality they didn't know how to explain. Slowly, the outside world began noticing the missing pieces. People asked questions, compared timelines, replayed old interviews, and realized something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just a slow recovery or a postponed appearance. It was the beginning of a new and darker chapter in the royal story, one shaped not by grace and glamour, but by fear, uncertainty, and human frailty. And once the curtain of secrecy began to lift, royal watchers started stitching together the clues. What they found was chilling. Inside the palace, Prince William was no longer just the calm, collected future king everyone knew. He was a worried husband, watching the woman he loved fade in front of him. Friends say he barely slept. He hardly spoke. He moved around the palace like a man trapped inside his own thoughts. For the first time in his life, all the training, all the diplomacy, all the royal discipline, none of it could help him. This wasn't a scandal that could be handled. It wasn't a rumor to deny. This was Catherine, the mother of his children, slipping away in a way he couldn't stop. The weight on his shoulders grew unbearable. Adelaide Cottage, usually filled with laughter and children's voices, became a quiet place where every creak in the floor and every unanswered question felt like a warning. William, raised to hide emotion, now felt crushed by a feeling stronger than duty: helplessness. His days blurred into long hours of medical meetings, rushed phone calls, and nights spent staring out the window, hoping to see even the smallest sign of improvement. But what frightened him most wasn't what he saw happening to Catherine. It was what he didn't see. The spark in her eyes, the steady confidence she was famous for, the warm energy she carried into every room. All of it was fading. Even their children couldn't lift her spirit. The silence in the home felt heavy, like walking through thick fog. But William's breaking point didn't come from her illness alone. It came from the palace's refusal to tell the truth. Senior advisors kept insisting they should stay quiet, protect the crown, and keep the public calm. They believed sharing too much would create chaos. But William saw it differently. This wasn't about reputation. This was about giving Catherine dignity, about letting the world understand what she was fighting. Arguments broke out behind closed doors. Advisors begged him to stay quiet, but William was done listening. In one bold moment that shocked even King Charles, William sent his father a private email with just 5 powerful words: "She deserves more than silence." Someone close to the situation leaked that email, and the media exploded. But William didn't care anymore. His patience was gone. His focus was only on Catherine, on the woman who had supported him through every moment of royal life, and who now lay in bed struggling to breathe, while the world wondered where she had disappeared to. Advisors tried to calm him. They suggested staged photos, gentle statements, carefully crafted lies meant to soothe the public. But William refused. He began reaching out to a few trusted journalists, sharing hints the palace did not approve of. His frustration showed in his face. in his voice, and in the way he walked out of meetings without saying a word. Then, in mid-March, everything collapsed. Catherine's condition suddenly worsened. Doctors changed their approach. Treatments intensified. A chill spread through the palace. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a setback. The future queen's life was in danger, and the palace's silence had become its greatest mistake. But what had brought everything to this heartbreaking point? And why reveal it now? Let's dive and uncover where it all began. Catherine's sudden absence. It began with Catherine's absence. Her disappearance from public life was the first sign that something wasn't right. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. No events, no photos, no reassuring updates. At first, the palace insisted her surgery had gone well and that she simply needed time to recover. But those who followed the royal family closely knew something was off. The royal household never let silence stretch this long, not without reason. Every day, without an update, made the worry heavier. William was not seen visiting the hospital. There were no photos of the children spending time with their mother. Even the usual staged images meant to calm the public were missing. The royal gates stayed firmly closed, and the world was left with only questions and growing fear. The media, famous for chasing even the smallest hint of royal news, found nothing. Not a single paparazzi photo, not a casual sighting, not a whispered update from hospital staff. Catherine seemed to have vanished completely. Then things became even more unsettling. Prince William began canceling events with almost no explanation. Charity galas, speeches, official visits. He pulled out of them all. And when he did appear, he looked exhausted, his expression tight and worried. Insiders would later say his staff were told to clear his schedule indefinitely, but not to make any public announcement. This was no longer routine recovery. Something was clearly wrong. Slowly, tiny fragments of information began leaking from inside the palace. Unexpected complications, one aide whispered during an event. "They're trying to manage the fallout," said another. But still, official palace statements stayed the same. Privacy, rest, healing. Then came the leak that changed everything. A staff member from the London clinic who kept their identity hidden contacted a foreign journalist and said only 4 chilling words. "It's worse than they say." When that sentence appeared in the news, it spread across the world within hours. The palace declined to comment, but the shift in public mood was immediate. Suddenly, even major cautious news outlets began questioning the official story. The silence, once meant to protect Catherine, now felt like a warning. And that is where the unraveling truly began. Why weren't there any pictures showing she was getting better? Why had William suddenly stopped speaking? And why had Catherine disappeared so completely? Let's take a closer look. Hidden truth behind royal gates. For decades, Charles had been known as cautious, quiet, controlled. But when it came to Catherine, all of that disappeared. During an emotional meeting at Clarence's house, he reportedly slammed his fist on the table and said, "No more hiding. Let the world know what she's fighting." It was a turning point. A moment when the king put aside tradition and fear and chose honesty instead. Charles had watched the palace drown in its own silence. He had watched his son suffer. And after a private visit to Adelaide Cottage, only 15 minutes at Catherine's bedside, something inside him changed forever. When he left, his face was pale, his hands shook. The royal mask he normally wore had cracked. He realized Catherine wasn't recovering. She was fighting for her life, and the family's future hung by a thread. Inside the palace, a power struggle erupted. When Queen Camilla suggested a careful, controlled update, Charles cut her off. He spoke firmly. "Finally, this isn't about optics anymore, it's about her." For the first time since becoming king, Charles overruled everyone. He demanded full transparency, no more half-truths, no more delays. Some advisors feared it would cause panic. Others believed it would restore trust. But Charles made his decision not as a monarch, but as a father-in-law watching someone he loved disappear. And something unexpected happened. Charles and William, who had grown distant under the pressure, began to come together again. The anger and fear that had stood between them slowly faded. They worked side by side, reviewing statements, choosing their words carefully, preparing to speak not as royals, but as men whose lives had been changed by grief and uncertainty. But there was still one truth the public didn't know, a truth the family had only recently learned. Catherine's decline hadn't started suddenly. It hadn't come out of nowhere. The cancer wasn't new. Signs had been there long before the public suspected, and according to confidential documents, the palace had known, at least in part, for months. A secret buried beneath protocols, optimism, and fear. A secret that had finally forced its way into the light. Why was the truth kept from everyone? And who demanded the silence? Let's find out. Catherine's silent battle. Late in the final months of 2023, what was supposed to be a simple routine health check turned into the beginning of a quiet nightmare. During Catherine's screening, doctors noticed strange irregularities in her blood, small hints that something wasn't right. At first, those results were brushed aside as unclear, the kind of thing that could mean anything or nothing. But the palace doctors kept watching quietly, almost nervously. Then December came, and with it, more tests. And this time, the results only deepened their worry. By then, pain had already become part of Catherine's daily life. She was slimmer, more tired, moving a little slower, but still pushing herself to fulfill every royal duty placed before her. Even when her doctors advised her to slow down, to rest, to take a step back, she kept going. She continued smiling at events, hosting meetings for her early childhood program, and filming segments for projects she cared about deeply. But behind her bright smile was a silent battle, one almost no one knew about. Only a handful of trusted palace staff understood how bad things truly were. According to some of them, Catherine collapsed twice behind closed doors. Once, during a private charity dinner, and another time during a visit to a royal children's hospital. Each collapse was hidden with nearly military precision. Guests were quietly told she had a migraine. Security moved fast. No photos leaked. No reporters caught wind. But inside the palace, panic was growing. William, more than anyone, saw the truth. He watched her body weaken. He noticed that she barely ate. He saw how hard she fought just to keep the image of strength alive. He begged her, truly begged her, to stop working. "Please rest," he reportedly told her. "Let the doctors find out what's going on." But Catherine refused. In her mind, she wasn't just a princess. She was a symbol of steadiness, of kindness, of stability. "Let me work while I still can," she supposedly told him. "People need to see something steady." Her will was unbreakable, but her body was not. And that painful contrast, her determination versus her declining health, terrified William more than anything else. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, senior aides were caught in another crisis. King Charles was dealing with his own health struggles, and the thought of announcing that two of the monarchy's most important figures were seriously ill felt like a disaster waiting to happen. They feared it would shake public confidence, ignite worries about succession, and paint the royal family as fragile instead of strong. So the truth was buried. Catherine agreed temporarily, reassured that it was early, that it was manageable, and that treatment could begin quietly. But the cancer didn't care about timetables or public image. It spread quickly, more aggressively than anyone expected. And by the time the palace was ready to admit the truth, the situation was already slipping out of control. Doctors expressed worries. Advisors whispered their guilt, but none of them could undo the silence that had cost precious time. The damage was not just to Catherine's health, but also to the trust between the monarchy and the people who believed in it. William, torn between being a prince and being a husband, began distancing himself from those who had pressured them into secrecy. The institution had chosen silence and lost. Yet in the middle of all these secret decisions and hidden fears, no one predicted what Catherine would do next. She stunned the entire nation with a single act of courage. Without alerting the palace press team or following any royal protocol, Catherine recorded a video. It was raw, unpolished, painfully real. She stood in the garden where her children once played, but her words were anything but light. Her voice trembled. And in just 94 seconds, she changed the way the world saw the royal family. There were no palace statements, no staged photos, no polished press releases, just Catherine, alone, honest, vulnerable, speaking straight into the camera. She began by thanking everyone for their patience and kindness. Then came the words that froze the country. She confirmed the rumors. The surgery had revealed cancer, and she was undergoing preventive chemotherapy. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had walked through fear and was now facing it openly. She didn't share medical details. Instead, she talked about her family, strength, and the need for privacy. But anyone listening closely could hear something else. An unspoken goodbye woven softly between the lines, as though she was preparing the world for a future she wasn't sure she would see. The reaction was immediate. Social media lit up within minutes. The video spread across continents, translated into dozens of languages. Experts analyzed every second, royal commentators debated what it meant. Hashtags supporting her filled the internet. Candlelight vigils appeared outside Kensington Palace and Windsor Castle. Strangers cried together in the streets. People weren't responding to a royal. They were responding to a human being, a mother, a wife, a woman, fighting for her life.
I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health.
Her openness shattered the cold, distant image of the monarchy and replaced it with something painfully real. But behind closed doors, the emotional aftermath was even heavier. William, who reportedly didn't know she would release the video that day, appeared truly shaken during a school visit. When a student gently asked him how Catherine was doing, he turned away, paused, and for the first time in his public life, he cried in front of a crowd. The press, stunned by the moment, chose not to publish the footage out of respect. Even they sensed that this was not just news, it was heartbreak. From that moment on, everything changed. The monarchy, so protected by tradition and secrecy, was forced into a new era. Catherine had done what no royal had done before. She exposed the vulnerability behind the royal mask, and instead of weakening her, it made the world love her even more. But while the public was moved by her bravery, another storm was already brewing behind palace doors. Catherine needed rest, and the palace, now fully aware of the crisis, had to act. Decisions had to be made. Decisions that would shape not only Catherine's future, but the future of the entire monarchy. Who would stand in for the monarchy if she never came back? Who would protect the children in her absence? And to whom would the public turn if their cherished princess never returned? Let's take a look. The fraying thread. Alliances began to crack, hidden agendas emerged, and not every member of the royal family had Catherine's well-being at heart. In the days after her video message, the world outside watched with quiet admiration, while inside the palace, tension and worry simmered. Catherine was more than a symbol of modern royalty. She was the thread holding together the monarchy's fragile image, and now that thread was starting to fray behind the thick walls and heavy curtains. A new, almost unthinkable conversation began. Even the mere thought sent ripples of political maneuvering through royal ranks. Camilla, long practiced at navigating power quietly, reportedly started expressing interest in taking on more visible ceremonial duties. Some in her circle saw it as an opportunity to step into the spotlight, while sympathy for the royal family surged. But not everyone welcomed the idea. Princess Anne, whose loyalty to Catherine was forged in grit rather than glamour, acted quickly. She and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, opposed any move to replace Catherine too soon. They reportedly spoke directly to King Charles, warning that even discussing a substitute would feel like a betrayal to the public and the family alike. Anne, never shy with her opinions, allegedly cautioned that rushing to fill Catherine's role could shatter the monarchy beyond repair. Yet tension only grew. Behind every closed-door meeting, two forces collided: loyalty versus practicality. At the center of it all was William. He refused to entertain the idea of stand-ins or replacements. He understood the pressure, but he also knew that even acknowledging a backup plan would feel like surrender, and he wasn't ready to give up on Catherine. Not now. Not ever. Advisors tried to reason with him.
It was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful.
Pointing out the need for continuity and the public's inevitable demand for answers. William's response was firm and unwavering. She's not gone. As time passed with no updates, the pressure became almost unbearable. Aides debated whether to release a progress report to calm public nerves, or if that would only invite more scrutiny. The palace communications team froze, caught between guarding Catherine's privacy and maintaining control over the story. Meanwhile, secret contingency plans quietly took shape: alternative schedules, redistributed patronages, and subtle reshuffling of official duties. Every step was hidden behind closed doors, but William noticed it all. Tensions that had long simmered in silence suddenly seemed louder than ever. Trust within the royal family was cracking, and the fragile sense of unity threatened to slip completely through their fingers. Just when it appeared the family might fracture under the weight of fear, rumors, and speculation, something extraordinary happened. A twist no one had expected, one that would once again place Catherine at the very center of the crown's story. As the world braced for more bad news, a new royal statement arrived. This time, it came directly from Catherine herself. With a mix of caution and quiet joy, she revealed what so many had prayed for, but barely dared to hope. The cancer was in remission. Yet even this good news carried a shadow, a lingering question whispered in every corner of the palace and every home watching closely. How long will this peace last? Catherine's message was brief, deliberate, and deeply moving. She began by thanking the public for their outpouring of support.
Having been lucky enough to meet some of our country's amazing charities and organizations.
Their messages of compassion and their unwavering love. She spoke of resilience, of faith, and of the strength she drew from her husband and children during her darkest days. And then, with a quiet but unmistakable pride, she shared the miraculous news. Her treatment had worked, and for now, the cancer was no longer active. She was in remission. The words rippled across the globe like a tide of cautious celebration. News outlets called it a miracle. Social media erupted with prayers, cheers, and tears. And yet, beneath the surge of relief, there was a subtle restraint. Catherine did not present her remission as a triumph. She framed it as a cautious step forward on a road that was still long and uncertain. Her tone was steady but humble, acknowledging the physical and emotional toll of the past months. Even now, her voice carried the faint tremor of someone who had faced the edge and lived to tell the tale. She emphasized the importance of vigilance, reminding everyone that remission did not mean the danger was gone. Medical experts echoed her caution. The signs of cancer might have receded, but the risk remained. Careful monitoring would now become a part of her daily life. Inside the palace, this reality was understood fully. William, overjoyed yet protective, insisted that Catherine's return to public life
Mental health is best supported and all those around children and raising the next generation today.
be measured and gentle. Catherine, wise and self-aware, agreed. Slowly, she began to appear at private events, hospital visits, early childhood charity programs, and small gatherings that would not exhaust her strength. Even in these controlled appearances, the difference was clear. She looked thinner, more reserved, her radiant glow tempered by months of recovery. Yet she smiled, and that smile, simple as it was, rekindled a fragile flame of hope. One moment captured the world's heart: Catherine walking hand in hand with her children at a school event. It was not a grand official occasion, yet it became profoundly symbolic. It was a silent message that life, though fragile, was moving forward. Parents and teachers described her as gracious, focused entirely on her children, visibly moved by the reception. Beyond the palace, beyond the titles and ceremonies, she was still a mother, striving to give her children a sense of normalcy in the midst of chaos. What if it comes back? What if this brief moment of relief is only temporary? And if the unthinkable happens again, how will the monarchy brace itself for the storm ahead? Let's explore further. Catherine's quiet revolution. Catherine had brought light back into the palace, but even as that glow returned, shadows still lingered in the corners. The nation celebrated, but behind closed doors, a final royal decision loomed, one that could shake the monarchy to its core and test the family's unity like never before. The world might see a smiling, poised princess once more, but those who knew her best understood the storm she had endured and the trail it left behind. With King Charles and Prince William preparing for new transitions, the royal family now faced a future full of uncertainty. Catherine's courage and resilience had redrawn the map of the monarchy. When the final public address was delivered, it was not a scene of pomp or celebration. There were no fanfares or grand gestures, only a quiet, profound respect. Standing side by side, King Charles and his son conveyed what so many had felt in their hearts. "Her courage," Charles said solemnly, "has reset the monarchy." In those few words, a powerful truth was sealed. Catherine had achieved what decades of advisors, rules, and ceremonies had never managed. She'd returned humanity to the monarchy.
It's really important to stress that we can't take a fatalistic outlook on this either, for those who haven't had.
This was no longer about appearances or tradition. It was about survival. It was about the rare, quiet strength needed to endure relentless public scrutiny while fighting battles that are intensely personal. Behind the palace walls, changes had already begun. Rules once set in stone were quietly rewritten. Advisors drafted plans that had never been considered before, not just for the death of a sovereign, but for the possibility of a future queen needing to step back to survive. Responsibilities shifted, expectations softened, and the palace could no longer cling to the illusion of unending health. Catherine's ordeal had exposed the woman behind the tiara and the fragile core of an institution long resistant to change. Now, it had no choice but to evolve. Yet her legacy would extend far beyond protocol and procedure. The emotional ripples of her illness spread through the monarchy's charitable and social work. Mental health, once considered a secondary concern, became central. Her lifelong dedication to early childhood care took on deeper meaning. Quiet visits, handwritten notes, and gentle advocacy became part of a larger effort to bring empathy into royal duties. The old rules, showing up, smiling, and shaking hands, were no longer enough. Catherine had rewritten them. Show up, yes, but do it honestly, vulnerably, with the scars visible and unhidden. The impact of her journey would touch those closest to her forever, especially her children, George, Charlotte, and Louis.
Just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society I hope we could and can become.
No longer mere heirs or ceremonial figures, they carried the story of their mother. They witnessed something most royals never show: fragility, courage, and the cost of silence. Insiders say that during her darkest days, Catherine wrote each of her children a personal letter, sealed and stored, to be read only if she didn't return. While never confirmed publicly, the knowledge that such letters exist adds even more weight to her legacy. Catherine did not endure her struggles quietly. She transformed them. She gave her pain a purpose. And now, as she slowly returns to public life, the world does not see a princess clinging to her role. They see a woman who faced the brink and chose to fight. A woman who reminded a nation that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, like a mother holding on. Her battle may not be over, but her courage has already reshaped the monarchy. So what are your thoughts on King Charles and William confirming the tragic news about Kate Middleton? Share them with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.